235-5479.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available. SM Group International Limited, your solutions partner for the latest innovations, brands and competent staff to meet your needs. We provide products and services in the following divisions: executive services, event rental and services, power and heavy equipment, construction and property management, food and beverage, aggregate and sales and distribution. Check out more on our products and services at www.smgrouptt.com. Contact us at 221-7445 or email at info@smgrouptt.com. We are SM Group International, your solutions partner.
WESN.
Well, it happened. Oh boy, did it happen. The situation is an interesting one that have been brought back to us. All right. Let's just say it did not exactly go how I expected, and yet it kind of did go maybe one of the possible ways that we expected, and yet it's correct.
My name is Dr. Stephen Carroll, the CEO at Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist, and we are committed to making good private health care affordable.
For all your medical needs, including dental, radiology, laparoscopy, behavioral and mental health, along with many other services, contact us for more information at 235-5479.
Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
As always, we appreciate you starting your day with us. Let's get into this morning's first conversation.
Is the country's healthcare system more at risk more than ever?
Why it has remained unaddressed for so long.
Political parties get lots of cash, big cash from financiers, and then when they get that now, you can't account for it.
But it's really the specialist nurses who we are in a greater shortfall for.
We can tap into the resources and have them, at least form some mentorship programs.
Highlight our food systems, and which will attract persons from all over the world to come and experience something that actually supports the local economy.
We're lucky that we have a vibrant legal system that allows change to take place, and it's not that matters are just swept under the carpet and discrimination is allowed to be perpetrated.
A lot of people don't know that there were attempts to ban the carnival, suppress the carnival.
All right, let's try this again. So as I was saying, you probably didn't hear me, we're in a situation that I didn't see coming. It might be within the realms of a satisfaction result for me personally, not necessarily due to who won or who lost, but rather we may have seen signs that the status quo was not maintained with regards to the voting public. But there's a caveat to that. The voter turnout, given the results, was arguably unexpectedly low. This was not something that was anticipated, I think, by anybody. So the thought now is that the PNM lost votes. One morning paper reports that the PNM votes dropped by 102,000. It suggests that essentially people who supported the PNM in the last general election, they just didn't turn up. Because the voter turnout numbers for this year is not too dissimilar to last year. No, last election. Last election, it was 58.4% of the list of voters. Now, of course, the population potentially has grown within the last 5 years. The list of voters may have potentially grown. So it's not an apples-to-apples comparison, but arguably, the number of eligible voters could potentially be larger this go-around. Right now, we have a 54% voter turnout. So the percentage dropped. I'm not entirely sure if the total number dropped, but that seems to potentially be the case. And yet the incumbent didn't win. And this is something that everything I saw, all of the analysts, all of the commentators, all of the predictions said if voter turnout was low, the incumbent would win. Even on our panel, Monday night, David Abdullah said it live on air. And when he said it, I was in full agreement with it. Because that's what we saw in 2020. Voter turnout was low, but the PNM won. They lost ground by about a seat, but at the end of the day, they won. And the thought, I guess, would have been that if the voter turnout was low, we would get the similar, same old kind of result that we've seen in probably the last 2 elections, which is both parties hovering around 18 to 21, 20 seats. The one thing that was expected, though it wasn't guaranteed, Tobago won its 2 seats. But even with the low voter turnout, the UNC went home with a grand haul. And the implications of that for both parties. Whew. Because on one hand, we have a UNC government that one could in some ways argue have a clear mandate by the voters to take charge proactively, except, again, the voter turnout is kind of low. So one of the things that bothers me is far too many people decided to just stay away from the polls as opposed to proactively engaging in politics, proactively being part of the mandate for whoever the new government is. So almost 50% of the voters, we haven't heard from you. We don't know really what the will of the people are. We just know what the will of 54% of the people are. But the flip side is this is just about as bad a loss as it was in 2010, 15 years ago, when arguably the PNM found itself in one of its worst positions in quite some time up until that point, where Dr. Keith Rowley was the voice of dissidents within the party, disagreement to the then leader, Patrick Manning, who was basically catapulted to the position of political leader, in part due to the results that happened in that snap election. And the parallels don't end there. This was essentially a snap election. It was called within a month away. But it didn't seem to have, at least externally, the same sort of pressure to call the election as soon as possible as it did back in Mr. Manning's final term. And we see the results. they are what they are. To what extent was the PNM voted out, or in this case, abandoned by its supporters? To what extent was the politicking of the last 5 weeks, did it even matter to the result? One could argue potentially no, given the low voter turnout. This election could have been decided well in advance of it being called. and both parties, well, all parties could have saved themselves a lot of money. Because I guess one of the things that the campaign trail did not necessarily highlight well enough were the actual practical issues and what it meant to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, who have been suffering through them for the last 2 to 3 years in particular. Some of the most important issues, I think, really hurt the incumbent government. But again, parallels to 2010. Not only is the result very similar, the amount of seats that the PNM is walking away with might be just one more than 2010. To sink so far down, essentially, Dr. Rowley has set himself up that part of his legacy is going to be marred similar to part of Mr. Manning's legacy. Because the way how Mr. Manning was essentially pushed out of political life, well, the final result, that last election, and everything that led up to it, that caused the population to want to change from his administration, from his tenureship, I would argue similar things happened. One could argue that was the time when Mr. Manning was perhaps maybe the most arrogant, the most stubborn, not necessarily listening to outside opinion. And at least in his case, I could point to the fact that he had specific legislative agendas that he wanted to see pushed through, that he essentially formulated part of his government around pushing them through. But unfortunately, he never had a chance to do so based on what happened. And he also contributed probably one of the few legacy projects not marred by any sort of significant controversy, except who got the contracts, etc., etc. But even that, there's a parallel to right now. NH International last year was complaining about a Chinese company getting contracts, which the irony, of course, was one would have thought that would have been one of Dr. Rowley's allies from back in 2010. How now does he fall into a similar scenario to his predecessor, to have the same private stakeholder saying almost the same thing? And now we do have to wonder with regards to the effectiveness of campaigns. We could look at every single PNM rally and basically say whatever we had to see there from the reaction of the people who went really didn't matter, because the base is the base, but a party base is just not enough. There are recounts still going on. I'm not entirely sure. I believe potentially we would hopefully get the final results. That was one of the things coming out of the election, exactly who officially won their seat, who did not. Of course, certain seats were still, at least as of yesterday, somewhat up in the air. But we're going right now with the basic result, 26-13-2. I think no one is disputing the 2 in Tobago. And I just find myself, I'm hopeful we're not seeing the usual results. PNM lost by a large landslide. Dr. Emery Brown is right when he says the PNM must take its bitter medicine. If anything, the one thing on the campaign trail, I think the effect of the 2 major campaigns, the UNC maybe proved just enough that, listen, we're serious. We're not going to do the same usual silly nonsense that we've done for most of the past 9 years. Even Philip Edward Alexander, to his credit, didn't go off the deep end. He was handling himself with reasonable enough, if not good grace. Of course, there were the usual suspects who wanted to throw out the personal attacks. But it seemed as though the PNM completely lost touch with the population. And I do wonder if part of the result, the UNC supporters supported the UNC, and maybe it's a similar level of support as last year, maybe a bit more. But a lot of people they were confident in the decision from the campaign trail. Not that they were trying to decide on who they were going to vote for per se. Meanwhile, with the PNM, I do wonder if the campaign was actually a net negative. I find myself not only having to wonder why is it that they are speaking so aggressively and using so much personal attacks and utilizing people from the UNC in a manner which, in my mind, does not necessarily make the party look that much better. That is the PNM. But more importantly, it seemed as though every time Stuart Young got on a platform to speak, somehow he would highlight a deficiency, a failing, or a bad decision by the administration he was previously a part of. And in my mind, two of the biggest issues that it cannot be understated that contributed to the negative perception of the previous administration was the Salary Review Commission and the acceptance of their recommendations for the salary and pension increases for senior government officials, most notably members of Cabinet and Parliament, and the Auditor General fiasco. Let's not forget, that happened last year over the government accounts of the year before. We don't have audited accounts for 2024 because the election was more or less called and Parliament was essentially dissolved, so the Senate was dissolved around the time when the Auditor General was supposed to send the report and the Minister of Finance was supposed to send it to the Senate. But people still talk about that $3 billion, give or take. And even in one of the reports this morning, one of the people anonymously responding to Newsday this morning with regards to their reaction to the election pointed out the fact 4% for the workers and over 40% for the politicians. And when Stuart Young once says how he fought for the unions and he fought for the workers, it was a slap in the face in an already bad situation that saw the unions given enough ammunition by the administration to beat the PNM up and down the campaign trail over their head with that SRC situation and only 4%. I don't believe starting at 10% and potentially going up is practical or is doable. But at the end of the day, it is still a more reasonable position than what the PNM gave while in office. So many self-inflicted errors over the last 2 to 3 to 4 years. And now, there are certain questions with regards to the incoming UNC administration. What will they find? With regards to situations where we had questions, will they give us those answers? And of course, there's the big question, who's going to be the opposition leader and who's going to be the members of Kamala Persad-Bissessa's cabinet? Those are the two big questions now. And dare I say right now, the post of opposition leader has captivated the country even more than who is going to be the ministers who are going to essentially run the country for the next 5 years. And I would argue that at the very least, given what happened in the last 2 snap elections, the PNM lost so handedly both times. I don't expect the current administration to run that risk. So many questions still with regards to what was going on, why the PNM did what they did. It's not about enjoying that they lost. It's not about being happy that the UNC won. What I am happy is that the voters, those who voted, spoke. What I am not happy about is, I would argue, not enough people voted. and hopefully the mandate that the UNC has, they don't turn into the thing that they were fighting against in the last 10 years. Because that seemingly is the trend. You win an election by a significant margin, you feel that everybody loves you and you know best, and then you stop listening to other people. Because part of the arrogance of the previous administration was basically speaking down to everybody, from members of the public to the media, to the outside third-party analysts, experts, technocrats, what have you. Except, in hindsight, one could argue Dr. Rowley, Mr. Young, Mr. Imbert, Mr. Hines. What were you thinking? It's not that hard. There's a lot of unsolicited advice. And I would argue that the unsolicited advice, probably it would have been better to listen to that than your own instincts. Maybe you won't end up where you are right now. And maybe that's one of the things that the new administration needs to take away from this election. Not to say that everybody who calls themselves an expert is right, but it does give a consensus of varied opinions and perspectives, and maybe they shouldn't be just dismissed out of hand. Particularly the opinions and perspectives of the wider population. All right, there's a lot to unpack. There's a lot to get into, a lot of minor details to point out. And we'll do that and more. Stay tuned. This is Talk About on WSN. We'll be right back after this.
My name is Dr. Stephen Carroll, the CEO at Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist, and we are committed to making good private healthcare affordable.
For all your medical needs, including dental, radiology, laparoscopy, behavioral and mental health, along with many other services, contact us for more information at 235-5479.
Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm not to do with that.
I find that was distasteful.
The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the Normalization Committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break the balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have two. Lamar don't
Why?
have.
You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No,
let's go to the last part.
celebrate 15 years of Caribbean literature. It's a homecoming with stories, debates, open mics, music, workshops, films, and exciting youth and children's festivals at the 2025 Bocas Lit Fest. 50 events, over 100 writers, speakers, and performers. Check the program at bocaslitfest.com. That's bocaslitfest.com. See you at the National Library in Port of Spain from Thursday 1st to Sunday 4th May, or tune in online on YouTube.
I'm back here and talking about the WSND Content Capital Show. Michael Small here alongside the good lady herself. She was the Minister of Finance in 2010. And
27 to 2010.
27 to 2010, which is an election I'm drawing a lot of parallels to, and Karen herself is seeing some of those parallels. So, of course, I think her experience is quite directly attributable with regards to analyzing the potential outcomes of what's going to happen. Just today, General Counsel of the PNM is going to meet to decide on the opposition leader, well, to decide on the political leader, and then that will be the opposition leader, all things considered. So to speak about that, we have Karen Nessa.
I really, of course, I took the position that I didn't want to take the party politics. Although, of course, what I spoke about was the governance issues. And but today I feel freer to be able to speak more candidly now the elections are over. And with regard to what's going to happen in General Counsel, I'm not surprised that Dr. Rowley is saying that he's unfazed. He should not be fazed, because what goes around comes around. I can tell you, because I was in there. I was there when Mr. Manning was had come in there and spoken about giving him a little time before he gave over the mantle of opposition leader. And what people heard outside of General Counsel is nothing compared to what happened in the General Counsel. I was shocked. The humiliation, the behavior, the conduct, the vitriol. I mean, it was unbelievable. And there were persons who were raising that, leading that charge, and thankfully they are not in government anymore. They're not part of the, not only not in the in government, but they're also not one of the members of parliament. That much I can see. And so it is not surprising to me that he knows what's coming down the pipeline for him, because he knows what happened with that General Counsel with Mr. Manning. And I would say Mr. Manning never was disrespectful. He maintained his cool. I'm sure he was very hurt. And he was the man that we know him to be, a man under tremendous power, tremendous pressure, and he still maintained his dignity that we know him for. So I am glad, I'm sorry, I take some pleasure in that, because it was too painful to listen to. It was just too painful to listen to.
On that day?
Oh my God, I just couldn't. I said, do you have to go down as far as that? It was like determined to humiliate him, to crush him to the ground. And, you know, and now I have come to this day when what goes around does come around. Well, and that's why he says he's unfair, because he knows what's going to happen.
No, but I want to go there first, before we get to the General Counsel, because you said, look at how they crucified Mr. Manning.
Yeah, they did.
And I'm sure it's based on the result, right? They had 12 seats.
It's not only
back
based
then.
on, I think it was a number of things.
No, but
one
the
justification,
because if he
he
won,
called the election early, and
right.
a lot of many people advised him not to do so, including the foreign firm. I can't remember whether they're Canadian or American, but they're well respected, and they told him that if he had the elections at that point, that they were going to lose.
Yes.
And so there were a lot of people I do know that spoke to him, tried to convince him not to call the election. So that had a lot to do with it. Also, there was no love lost between Mr. Manning and Dr. Rowley. I can assure you of that. No love lost at all. I think there was a lot of animus on the part of Dr. Rowley, if anything, more so on Dr. Rowley's side. It's just his personality, I think. So it wasn't just a question of disappointment with the results, which of course is very understandable. But I think it was more than that, and I think that there was some level of perverse pleasure in doing what they did.
But the reason why I say that is, look at the results of this year. It's just one seat better than those results, which to some extent got the ball rolling. And the thing is, there were a lot of decisions where people, including people in the party and outsiders, said, don't do this. Don't put Stuart Young there like this. Don't make this decision with regards to the salary recommendations, etc., etc. And I just find it part of why I understand exactly why you're saying what you said is that some of the people who lambasted Mr. Manning that time essentially were the people in charge that got this result.
Yes, and they're not going to be in general council, so maybe they'll be spared. I think they'll be spared. And when you lose your seat, well, some of them may still be because I lost my seat.
They aren't they as part of the party executive?
Party executive, that's true.
It's parliamentary position, it's not the general
so they will
council.
So they will be here to upfront and personal. And I can't help but say that, you know, I don't like to see myself as being, you know, yes, I'm not at all. I don't see myself as that. But I do look at this as, you know, karma. And I do look at this as, you know, it's self-inflicted wounds. You could say Mr. Manning caused his own downfall by calling the election early against the advice of so many people in the executive of the party. And they tried to get him to change his mind, and he would not. So there was a lot of pain and hurt and anger there. But on the same token, on Dr. Rowley's part, his whole administration was filled with vitriol, bitterness, vulgarity, lack of things. So his whole administration, that was what marked it. And in addition to that, you had him making Stuart Young, who people feel, you know, we have your views on that. You know, some of the same thing that brought you where you are, you know, and having Stuart Young and then holding on to the post of party leader, having your own way, anointing, not appointing, selecting, not electing. That is something the PNM is not going to put up with. And you use your position as maximum leader because the Constitution allows that, and people couldn't wait to send a message loud and clear to you and hope that the PNM can rebuild itself with a new leadership. And it certainly cannot be Stuart Young or anybody from that Digger Martin constituency, which UNC did not run in those 4 seats with the former Prime Minister, Dr. Rowley, in Digger Martin West. UNC did not run there. I think they let PEP run.
Yes, I think PEP ran in Digger Martin
Central, Digger Martin Northeast. UNC did not run in those seats, right? But they had a coalition of interests running in those seats. Similarly, for the former Prime Minister, now I'm pleased to say, he also, the UNC did not put up someone. They had PEP, the coalition of interests. So what I'm saying is that UNC did not put in their own candidate in those 4 seats that have been retained by the PNM. And that is not, you know, it's just no indication. In fact, what you will note that I brought in the 2020 results from the EBC and from 2020. And we know that 102,090 people, fewer people voted.
Yes, I was not going to get to that.
102,090, right? And what would account for that? I would think that it would not be the UNC strongholds. And I'm not saying that just because I'm not being biased on that. I'm using scientific
one
data.
thing to point out, 2020, the total vote count is reported at 658,000. And this election, it's 617,000. So they can't even, like, the voter drop-off does not account fully for the 120,000 votes, 102,000 votes lost. That might be account for a bit under half, right? But there's still probably people who potentially crossed the floor, or the UNC did increase its voter count while the PNM dropped theirs.
I think it's, let me just look at this. I have the data on the results for 2015. Was 66.7% when the PNM came in after the 5 years of the UNC. And then in 2020, we did have COVID, so a lot of people may not have wanted to go to the polling station because a lot of people were dying, literally. And so you could maybe the drop-off in the number of persons who voted may be accountable to that, and that was 58.8. But this year, there's no COVID. There's nothing like that. And it's even worse. 54%. And what that is saying, I mean, if you're going to be logical and scientific about it, I have the 2020 results, and I can tell you, based on those results, that the UNC strongholds, you got over the general average was 60-something%. And I don't expect that dropped. Whereas in the PNM strongholds, which they have retained, average was 40-something. Port of Spain South was 43%. St. Anne's West, Stuart Young constituency, it was 47 point something percent. Then you have, 47, yes. And Diego Martin Central was 48.45. Diego Martin Northeast, as column Imbert, 47.34. Diego Martin West, which is your Dr. Rowley, 47.34. So you can see the trending, whereas if you look at the UNC stronghold areas, and you did have a few of the PNM trending fairly well. Aruka Maloney, well, 51.3, and I think good because, you know, they weren't doing well at all. And then you had Lebre with 59.87, so that was nearly 60.
This was back in 2010, right?
This is back in 2010.
Yeah.
But what you would see, that in all the seats that were retained by the UNC, the average is over, on average, over 60%. And I'm going to give you some of the data. Barataria Sawa, 61.39%. Caroni East, 62.04%. Chaguanas East, 59.99%. That's nearly 60. Chaguanas West, 63.60. Couva North, 62.52. Couva South, 61.07. So you see a very heavy turnout in the UNC strongholds. Pointe-a-Pierre, which is now Claxton Bay, was 66.21. Then you have Princestown, was nearly 60%, 59.71. So if you see Separia, 60.70. So you see all of the numbers going ahead, whereas with St. Anne's East, which I got it, St. Anne's East was 50.21, the PNM won that seat. And St. Augustine, 63, that's UNC, 63.02. So you see that a trending, generally speaking, was that the UNC strongholds had a, now we don't know who they voted for, right? We can't say that. But the UNC strongholds, it has to be more UNC voted in those constituencies than PNM voters because they won these seats. And generally, they were over 60%. Whereas in many of the PNM seats that they still retained, they were trending at 40-something% of voter turnout. And so what you're seeing today with over 102,090 people not voting, I suspect when we get the percentages, we are going to see that the fallout is going to be in former PNM strongholds that they lost in this election. And that can either be for two reasons. Some did go over to the UNC, yes, but a lot of them could not vote for the PNM, nor for the UNC. But they could not vote for the PNM. They could not vote.
In fact, this was one of the things that came from one of our callers repeatedly. He spoke about this, Mr. San Fernando. He basically didn't know who to vote for, and he thought for him, the best thing to do would be to spoil the ballot, to at least still engage with the process to send a message. Now, I totally understood that. I didn't do that myself. That's as much as I'm willing to say with who I voted for. I was in a safe seat spot, so my vote wouldn't matter that much, but I still voted for the fact that I had to vote, right?
That's right.
So at the end of the day, I think that was the answer. But a lot of people thought if the voter turnout was low, the incumbent, this was what all of the analysts said. This is what the trend said, because that's what happened in 2020. Low voter turnout, 58%, PNM won. But I think nobody necessarily anticipated, and maybe we should have, given a lot of the things you and I have spoken about over the last 4 years, but especially over the last 2 years, that the voters did stay away.
I think not, you know, I think one of the things that they all said, and I think that is true, you know, people really didn't make up their mind until the last 2 weeks, even the 2 days before. So? Yes, I think there were a lot of people, when I said not the UNC, you know, the PNM people.
Right.
A lot of PNM, because that's what it's showing. It's showing that PNM in 2020 had 322,250, so they got the majority vote. UNC got 309,188. But this year, PNM got 220,160, and UNC got 334,874.
Yeah, so
and
the stark differences.
Yeah, so you have to say, based on the trends you're seeing, people who could not bring themselves to vote for UNC did not vote for PNM as they would have previously.
I just want to point out that figure. If you look at the UNC's total vote, right? It's higher than the PNM's votes from 2020. But the PNM's votes from 2020 included Tobago.
True.
UNC had no candidates in Tobago.
Right.
So
that is true.
UNC had a much higher vote total.
That is true.
With two, well, and then we have to wonder, also, does that also account for the fact that the PEP went up in 4 PNM strongholds and not the UNC. So the UNC does not get potentially attributed votes from those. So potentially up to 6 constituencies do not contribute to that. Well, that somewhat large result for the UNC, all things considered.
And we're going to have 3 seats or recount for 3 seats at the request of the UNC. San Fernando East with Brian Manning, but and the person representing UNC is John Michael Ali Bukas. He won. The PNM won by 652 votes, so that's a fairly large margin given all things being considered.
Yeah.
And then Aruca Lupino, which is Marvin Gonzalez, who won against Chaitan Maraj. The difference is only 251 votes. And then we have the closest one is Malabar Mausica with Dominic Romain for UNC and Dominic Smith for PNM. And the difference is 144 votes.
I'm wondering.
I got this from the EBC.
Okay. So my source potentially has it wrong.
What does it say?
Between Dominic and Dominic. That's
the 2 Dominics.
Names, yes.
So what I got from the EBC, I downloaded it from the Express, where they had a preliminary count. And it said 144 votes separated them. So we still have to wait and see what will the outcome. I don't see that the Brian Manning one is a big, 652 votes is a lot, but you don't know what will happen. I mean, when we had local elections, it did have an impact on the outcome of finally when they did the tallying.
Dominic Romain is the PNM candidate. So
Dominic Romain? What did I call him?
Dominic Smith, I think.
Yes.
Okay, but that's a minor thing. It's the 2 Dominics. The point is, I would argue I don't really know either gentleman, and we'll see how the recount turns out. Now, the results, they're interesting. The UNC, a lot of people think that the result was obvious. I actually am starting to think.
Everybody has 2020 vision.
Not analysts. I'm talking about people who weren't wanting to talk to politics.
You heard that before the election results or after?
Well, a lot of people, I think.
No.
Like
did you hear that comment coming out before
maybe,
or after?
But it wasn't from.
Make a difference.
It wasn't from analysts. It would have been from normal people. So to some extent, the thought would have been, how much weight do you give that because they just have anecdotal experience as opposed to looking at trends and data and stuff like that. Or it could be wishful thinking. But that's what happened. But one of the things I do want to bring up before we go into what comes next is the fact that I do think that the PNM campaign actually was a net negative.
Oh, yes.
And I do think that, forget the name calling and the personal attacks. I found that Stuart Young, you and Dr. Shea Mohammed pointed this out in the concession speech, how he handled the concession speech.
Oh my gosh, I was so embarrassed. Honestly, as a PNM, former PNM and a minister and also being an MP, I felt embarrassed for that man. Well, he looked like a little boy standing up there with daddy standing up over him. And before they went in, I know how it works too, Before we went in, I said, now Stuart, when we go inside there, we can't be negative because Mr. Manning used to tell me that. He said, people read your body language. And if you look as if you're depressed and you feel that you have lost, that's in a way that intangible transmits to the electorate and they then feel down. So you always have to maintain a positive, optimistic thing. And that's what Mr. Manning had told me. You can clearly see that I admire Mr. Manning. And I am sure that Dr. Rowley, 35 years in politics, much more than I ever had, but I sat down on the sidelines and observed a lot. I am sure he told Stewie, he says, Stewie, now this is the outline. I go inside there, I'm going to talk first. I know I'm the political leader and you're the prime minister, but oh God, don't worry about that. What we're going to do now is I'm going to talk and talk positive and, talk like a statesman that I am not. And then you will come and talk. And then you will come and talk. Well, and so, no. I get him a chance. I got him a chance because I sat quietly over this whole election and I did not speak party politics. So I'm getting a chance to breathe, to exhale, right? And I was in the party, I was in the cabinet, and I was an MP. So I feel I have some believability or credibility. And it's not bad mind at all because I think PNM is a good party but lost its way. And there is Rowley standing over him like a stern father, looming over him literally. And there's Stuart Young standing up there like a little child. That is how he looked. That is how he looked.
Actually, can I say to me?
Yes, you can.
To me, it sounded like Stuart Young was almost to the point where he wasn't responding realistically to the results, given his almost defiant tone.
But that is you don't understand. But listen to what Rowley said.
Dr. Rowley. The thing is, to me, what Dr. Rowley said and what Stuart Young said is not the same thing.
Well, it was...
And Stuart Young was not speaking in a tone and with words that was parallel to Dr. Rowley. I thought he was going off. Yes, he might have been trying, but Dr. Rowley came off more successfully with regards to what he wanted to do.
So that's why he cut Stuart Young from talking and come and talk in front of him.
Potentially.
What do you mean?
Because to me, Dr. Rowley was doing damage control and Stuart Young was doing Stuart Young. And that was Stuart Young on the campaign trail.
Yeah, but he started by taking his tone from Dr. Rowley, and then he said, heck with this. I'm going to say what I feel. And Rowley said,
because that similar tone I found at times it caused Stuart Young to basically highlight a lot of the issues of the previous administration
of which he was a part,
and come off in a very condescending, hypocritical manner, which probably caused the voters to say, you can't be serious. We can't support this.
People did not drink his Kool-Aid.
Basically.
That is what. And I want to say...
No, not just drink his Kool-Aid. I think people not just didn't drink it. Exactly. Because to me, he made the SRC situation worse. He made a lot of situations worse for the party.
But you know what?
Just based on the campaigning in the last 5 weeks.
But what was he going to do? You stuck between a rock and a hard place. I just want to say that
that is kind of... I'm surprised how generous you are with that last statement, to be honest.
Well,
stuck in a rock and a hard place. Let's not forget, he called the election when he called the election.
Because on instructions, what is wrong with you? What is wrong with you? Didn't you see he stayed on? Rowley was a force all the time. You think everything that they did was not thought out with whoever the party advisors are? They thought this thing out. They said, we're going to call election right away. They're giving them no time to get ready.
But the problem was the PNM was less ready for the elections.
I know, but they did not.
They didn't think.
Well, that's part of their problem. They underestimated the readiness and underestimated Kamala. They even the 4, because Russell Parry is a smart man. He's a young man. She's an old person with a sharp mind. And he knows that he is not going to be labeled as a person who was a traitor to the party.
Yeah.
A traitor to the party.
Yeah, that's one of the things we said, not on air, but the dissidents that joined the PNM in haste, that was even before the results, folks, I just want to put that out there. We didn't say it on air, but even before the results, we didn't like that decision because basically the quick change in allegiance, who is going to really accept that?
And in fact, that might have driven people
away.
Yes, because listen, it's not that I do not, what it came across really, and it really came across very badly, is that for 9.5 years, and I read a lot of Dinesh's articles, which were very well written.
Yes,
and
he's a very smart man.
Yes, and I taught him too.
Yes, one of your more successful students.
Yeah, but I got on well with him and so on. So I used to read his articles. Very, very, very excellent writer, excellent, insightful, and so on. And I think he allowed his emotion and his anger at being thrown out by the UNC and allowed it to overcome good sense to prevail. As you see, the older Parry knew not to do that. Mm-hmm. And then Anita Haynes, young too, and she did herself that one was worse because you came on the literally last meeting and came there and joined over. I mean, how do you think that looks? How does that look? You have just done so much damage to yourself and credibility. You have squandered your credibility, both of you. I'm very sorry to have to say that because I do like Dinesh personally. I've done things with him with the
I found he was one of the smarter, better spoken, really better organized parliamentarians.
Absolutely.
And I'm disappointed because
he's
basically put himself out of any sort of reasonable political contention now.
And what he has done, seriously, is that he does not show political smarts. That's not political. I mean, you can't just think separate the forest from the trees. You can't have myopia. You can't be short. You're a young person. You have this is 5 years. Sit it out and build back because he had a lot of support. Chaguanas West In 2020, he got over 15,000 votes to the PNM 1,000 and something, right? So it's no question that he was popular and well liked. But at the end of the day, this is what I wanted to say before we go to the break, and maybe you can develop it more. I think there are three ways that you have to look at the results. Part of it is that there are going to be persons who, regardless, are going to vote for their UNC or PNM.
Yes.
They're going to get that. So that is not something. Another thing, though, was the issue of personality, because when I was doing looking at what would consider to be marginal seats, some of them really were not marginal in the sense the difference was over 1,000, maybe 1,500 votes. But it depended on who was challenging. Jerlene John. When I saw Jerlene John going up against Vancouver South, and there was another one, it was not only Jerlene John, but when I saw, for instance, there was another one that didn't really, in my mind, really be was a really what you call a marginal seat, because the number of seats were pretty, number of votes were pretty, wide, the difference. But it had a lot to do with the personalities of the person. Devish Maraj is very popular. It was very close, yes, but I never heard a bad word about that gentleman. And David Lee, putting him from Claxton Bay, which was Point-de-Paix, which was kind of narrow, and putting him in Scarony East in a safe seat and giving it to someone, another candidate.
Yes.
So there was a lot of party allegiance, but in fact a party, personality, you cannot discount that. In Tunapuna, you cannot discount the impact of Roger Alexander, because they call it a marginal, but it was over 1,000 votes separated them in 2020.
One of the craziest things is the fact that look how late, to some extent, he was put as a candidate there, all things considered. And apparently his ground game was so much more apparent than the incumbent, Mr. Ford.
But it's also the strength of his personality.
Yes.
Yeah? And also, like Trump.
He has no political baggage.
Yeah, but it's
you
like
can't
Trump.
say he was part of the partnership and he did whatever wrong thing they did there, he did there. And in fact, I would argue he had his...
Did he have that show on television?
He was on Beyond the Tape. Which
that helped him a lot to get...
Not just that, how he was removed from that show. He went against an unpopular police executive that was seen as ineffective. They didn't like that he was speaking things that they didn't approve of. It made it look as though they were trying to cover things up. He was trying to speak the truth, so they moved them out.
What I'm saying in regards to him, even though he had a short window to go and go on ground, he already had via the television. So when he did, just like Trump had his show,
The Apprentice.
The Apprentice, that gave him a lot of.
I would like to say we are not saying that Mr. Alexander.
No, I'm not saying that.
I just know, but people will want to derive
that. I don't
he is not, Mr. Alexander is not like
No, I'm just saying he had visibility.
But some of the circumstances, that's Karen's point. Yes.
Visibility given the short window in which he had to.
But I would also argue that not only did he have media visibility, not only did he have a charismatic personality,
definitely,
right? Not only did he account for himself well on campaign platforms and calling him a bodybuilder, he didn't look like that. He looked like someone that knew what he was doing on the campaign. Let me just say that. But he has the credibility as an experienced policeman, aka he's done things. He's not just been a politician.
I want to tell him something, though. And somebody was telling him that. Take off the shades now. God, please.
Well, no, he wasn't wearing shades when he was speaking on the platform. He was wearing glasses. He looked very dignified.
Okay, I like that look.
Yes.
And the last thing I would say, so I said personality, like you had Roger Alexander and Jerlene John, made a big difference, because in those seats the margin was wider, so not really call it marginal. Yes, and the last thing is La Brea and Point Fortin is clearly because of the closure of Petrotrin, because they were both former OWT. They had to resign their positions from the OWT.
No, not OWTU, from different unions. Clyde Elder was communication workers.
Okay, and the other one was OWTU?
Maybe.
I believe so. I think... Yes, because what David Abdullah said that he had to resign before going up. But the point is that people have really suffered because of the man in the street. The people in Point Fortin is like... And Point Fortin, for which I lived in Point Fortin, so I can in a way, understand the feeling of the Point 14. My father worked at Shell with the refinery. I was a refinery child, so I can relate very much to what they have gone through from being a boom town and getting their own borough and all of that.
He was former OWTU, yes.
Who?
He was a branch president of the OWTU, Ernesto Keita.
Yes, that is what David Abdullah said. He said he had to resign in order to campaign, and Point 14 is where Shell was in Point 14, and the refinery was there. I lived there, you know.
The refinery, the PNM successfully turned the refinery into a complete and utter failure.
I'm telling you, and that scandal with Owando, and this thing about Owando.
Well, the main thing was,
and the procurement
if you could restart the refinery, right, it means that operationally, you never had to close it down. You could have restructured it for the same reasons.
Espinay and the other advisors to them told them.
Right.
When Espinay was in the industrial court under cross-examination by Douglas Mendez, he asked him directly if you were going to, did you agree with that it should be shut down? What was your view? And he had to admit that his advice was restructuring. And in fact said that the two consultants, very highly recommended consultants, worldwide, globally recognized, had told them about restructuring, and he said they had started the restructuring, and in the third quarter of that year, they saw 118 million profit, which he directly said was a result of taking on board some of the advice that the consultants had given him. So that alone tells you there's a lot of opaqueness in that closure of the refinery, and what we see, there's a lot of pain. And what we're seeing now, from my perspective, you're seeing Point 14 and La Brea, which are staunch PNM strongholds. People, you know, people from Grenada and St. Vincent, that's where they used to think Eric Williams was their prime minister. I'm from there, you know, so I know how they think. And I mean, at least the older generation or the young ones. So the young ones saved it. The young ones are the ones suffering the pain, and they felt hope with the unions coming in. And secondly, I think strength of personalities with Julian John and Roger Alexander, and just the base, and then just the disenchantment of the young people who are unemployed, can't get a job, and feel that they're being used by the PNM, which I totally agree with.
I can't speak to the other union leader, but I would say this. Clyde Elder was one of the union leaders. A lot of people know I generally don't trust a lot of what the union leaders say, but Clyde Elder was one of those who I found handled himself. I never had really any reason to say I disagree with him here or I disagree with him there, right? So I found that was a great choice, and it paid off well. One could argue maybe the UNC party should have been campaigning in Diego Martin and Port of Spain stronghold seats as opposed to the PP.
Listen, I think that road was a hard road to climb over.
Yeah.
You know, so I think they had to look at their resources and where best to put their resources and where best to put their candidates. And they took a decision. I mean, at the end of the day now, I think they have a 3/5 majority, so I hope when we come back, I would like to address some of the things that I believe that are required.
Let's take a break now. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation and we'll open the phone line. Stay tuned. This is Talk About WSN. A lot to unpack. Election 2025 results in the book. So we'll move on with the conversation. What comes next after this?
My name is Dr. Stephen Carroll, the CEO at Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist, and we are committed to making good private health care affordable.
For all your medical needs, including dental, radiology, laparoscopy, behavioral and mental health, along with many other services, contact us for more information at 235-5479.
Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
You are watching Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Just give an overview of what exactly is that split arrangement.
Now you don't need to register nothing. You don't need. We can do that another time. But then it becomes a hit, and then everybody starts to want to claim.
The laws that predate many of the independent countries' constitutions are going to be those colonial laws.
We know there are an infinite amount of circumstances that would lead to a murder.
I have a great idea and I have a great concept,
but until it's actually expressed, it does not become intellectual property.
Accomplishments or targets of a forensic accountant is to quantify what may have been lost.
We believe in different criminals and we manipulated the law and we exploited the system.
A responsible journalist will reach out to the person who they have the information on for a comment.
This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward on our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for. It's called loss and damage, and we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region.
Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
Welcome back to Talking About, ladies and gentlemen. A lot to unpack. We're going to transition now. We could probably still analyze the election, more and continue to do so. Hopefully, we'll have Dr. Sheikh Mohammed with Karen at least at some point in the near future, and they could go to town on all of that. But right now, a new government is in place, Karen, and you have a list of things that you think should be addressed as soon as possible.
Yes, I do think that's important that the new Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar, if she is going to give truth to or give action to her words and her campaign promise, which is when the UNC win, everybody wins, we have to see those words translated into reality. Because being frank with you, I think that was one of the problems or issues with the last time that she was in office. And secondly, one of the things I think also she clearly is a woman of her own. She stands on people felt that she was too weak and she had these men controlling her. That was their perception. She's clearly shown that is not who she is. All the persons who felt that she had to rely on, she clearly has shown that she has the resilience and she has the ability to lead and on her own and to make her own decisions, and that is a positive thing for her. And of course, her showing humility, which only a strong person can do that, because most people have too much hubris or arrogance to ever admit to being wrong. So what do I think she needs to do at the very outset? From political appointments, she's got to put a good cabinet together. And a cabinet that is representative of Trinidad and Tobago. We can't have one, because she would not have won this election, in my respectful opinion, if she did not get votes from the PNM voters, the traditional PNM voters. It would not have happened, and certainly would not have happened at the rate, at the extent to which it happened, if she did not appeal to people. So the cabinet has to be a cabinet that reflects the ethnic and, to some extent, religious composition of our country. That is
and maybe geographic as well.
Well, I mean, I suppose
you'll kind of get that by default with the MPs,
yeah,
maybe?
Because I mean, a lot of the seats that are won are down south, because you realize if you go on
it's basically everywhere except the northwest corner and San Fernando East. That's basically what it is.
Right, so not the urban areas.
Yeah.
So I don't really know if I want to say urban versus rural, but I want to say, definitely, let us be real. Let's not pretend. If she's going to live to what she has said, people are going to look, especially the non-UNC base, are going to look at who she puts in her cabinet, as well as when all those state-owned companies, especially the big ones like you have the Unit Trust, you have NIB, you have the NGC, and all of those larger, more maybe prestigious and powerful companies, state-owned companies, they are going to look at who she puts as chairman, and who she puts as directors. There's no getting around that. If you want to live in La La Land, and if you want to do what we went through and had to put up with for the last few years, and we saw how the people really felt when they took their finger and stained it, don't put yourself back in that. That's the first thing I will say.
Don't repeat the mistakes of your
No,
predecessor.
do not do that, because you're seeing what happened to the PNM. The people felt disenchanted, abused, and used, and they put faith in what you said.
Just before you move on, we have a comment,
from
not to toot our own horns, but it doesn't seem, I don't think we have a name, but if we could just put the comment up so that the viewers could see. You are also correct in saying the appearance of Dr. Ollie and Mrs. Stewart Young, so I assume we're also correct in what we were describing of their appearance with the concession speech. Real good show, that's my opinion. Thank you for that. Of course, listen, you could call in or message if you have a dissenting opinion. You don't have to agree with us. That's what the show is about.
Yes.
But an agreement basically is a sign that perhaps other people share the views. Maybe the consensus is correct. And that's something that the PNM failed to consider in the past.
And we're not going to be bitter. I mean, I'm not bitter about this at all. I've tried always to try to be objective. And, everybody says they love their country, but sometimes you wonder, oh, Diego Martin, because I wanted to say some of the things that she has to pass.
Okay.
Or she has a 3/5 majority. She could do something that she couldn't do
She
before.
has a 3/5 without the TPP. I haven't done the math.
I think they did say she got how many seats?
She doesn't need the TPP to make the government.
Okay, 26 out of 41 seats. How much is that? God, I'm going to show. Come on.
26 out of, oh gosh,
She got
quick math.
26. 26 out of them, because the PNM got 13 and TPP got 2. Right? So she got 26 out of 31.
She's right, 63% it looks like. She's right there. I guess 2/3 majority, you might need more
you need
than...
3/5. You don't need 2/3. For some things you need 2/3, some things you need 3/4. But for some you need 3/5.
Yes.
And that's what we had.
60%, 3/5.
Yes, I'm saying when I came into office with Mr. Manning, he told me now we have the 3/5. There's a lot of legislation he wanted to pass that we can pass and not have to rely on the opposition.
Okay, the responsibility, the ball is in UNC's court. We'll take Diego Martin's call now. Good morning, caller. You on the air?
Good morning, Mr. Small, and to the Honorable ex-Prime Minister. She has a majority. She doesn't have a special majority. But I will reflect on that and ask Karen a question after. The first one I want to think, for all women in Trinidad, I want to pick them up this morning. Kamala Prasad Bisesa has broken the ceiling twice. She has fought a male environment, mano, and she has put them into the dustbin. She started with winning the UNC election. She took care of Basdo Pandey. After that, she fought an election and she took care of Patrick Manning. She fought off Vasant Bharat and Devant and all of those. She fought off the tag team of Stewart and Kerry Christopher Rowley. She became Prime Minister again. All the women's group in Trinidad and Tobago should have acknowledged that. A woman has shown the way for little girls, daughters, aunties that, hey, in Trinidad and Tobago, you all have an opportunity. And you know what is the good thing about that? She's one of the few has this, I want to use the word education qualities, both as a lawyer and as a management, through her education. So she understands a lot of things other politicians would be on the job training like Stewart. For example, when you do management and you do marketing, there's a business cycle. And it takes you 9 years, 10 years. This is fit exactly into that. Now, the other thing I want to ask Karen, we have an opportunity. We don't have the super majority to change the Constitution, but there is something out there is grating, and that is the selection of Stewart as Prime Minister. If he retires today and he doesn't been swearing, he gets the pension and everything, and that is really frightening. We could use that loophole in the Constitution to put in Fitzy, give him a 10 days, and give him a whole pension. So that flaw in the Constitution needs to be changed so people could understand. Chief Christopher Rowley said, CPF is here to stay. And I am saying this election of Stuart Young as the Prime Minister is supervision of the office of the Prime Minister. And that is something we have to change because we have to question the presidency if a lot of the decision made from Max Richards right down to the current president, if they acted in the best interest and they were basically faithful to the spirit of the Constitution. I'll go and have a nice morning.
Thank you, caller. That's
Okay.
another topic. But
What I wanted to say, you do a 3/5 majority is enough for certain pieces of legislation which this government, this past government, had to water down significantly because they did not have a 3/5 majority.
And they
Which is
couldn't
required.
negotiate.
Which is required. Now
Yeah.
you need a special majority for constitutional change, which they do not have. So I want to be clear on that. But what they can make the changes, which when Mr. Manning was in office and I was the minister responsible for these pieces of legislation, the Trinidad and Tobago Revenue Authority, they watered it down considerably by making the person creating this special office, which is really where the power lies and where you want to deal with the corruption and the money laundering and the drug trade and these people who are operating. This is, I'm not asking you, I'm telling you. I mean, we had the TTRA pass in the lower house, and then Mr. Manning called the election, but that was under my my ministry. And we had the 3/5 majority, so we could have put in provisions in it that this government had to dilute it, well, for whatever reason, so it is not as strong and as effective to deal with things that they were about all the officers, all the employees of the TTRA under the authority. The second thing they could not do was with the Gambling Commission. Again, that required a 3/5 majority because they lost it. Yes, and one of the things they did, for example, what's the point of this? You have to ask them to come in to check out whether they're committing any wrong, any gambling place or what they call private members clubs still operating in this country, right?
Yeah.
And they haven't passed that legislation. Neither the TTRA has not been implemented. And if they say they're not going to let you in, you can't go in. You have to go now and find a magistrate to give you a power to go in. And what do you think they will do in that meantime?
They'll clean everything
Anyway,
up.
they might get a call off. So there's
Yes.
legislation that needs to be implemented.
We have St. James on the line. Good morning, caller. You on here?
Yes, good morning.
Morning.
Two questions here. One, what is the latest with Keaton Shah? Number two, this is the current. He mentioned that the closure of the refinery caused or probably would have been the reason for the loss of the 2 seats to not to the PNM, but to the other party, which is the two union guys. But there was an election immediately after the refinery was closed immediately after the
2018.
Yes. Why didn't that affect at that time the election results when he retained the young in South?
I'll give you the answer.
I'll listen off it.
Thank you.
Okay. I mean, we're dealing with COVID. I mean, people's memories are fading very quickly. This country and the world, Italy, America, everything you read, every time you put on the television, CNN, MSNBC, the only thing you're hearing about New York City, the mayor lost his job because of that. Chris Cuomo lost his job because of that.
The Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. but that was sometime
yeah,
after.
but I mean, what happened? They called election in 2020. What was going on in 2020? COVID. And to be frank with you, many people felt at that time that Prime Minister Rowley was a strong, no-nonsense person. WHO had recommended him for his position. He closed the borders early. Of course, there's an issue about people not being able to leave, but that's another story. But he came
and the
across...
borders not actually being closed.
Right, but the point was, to the man in the street, to everyone, we felt that at this point in our history, at this point in time, timing is everything. And at that point in time, elections were constitutionally, I mean, he may have called a few months earlier, but he could do that. And they were considered due. And the COVID thing, and whereas Kamala Possessor did not come across as having that kind of, that kind of no nonsense. I mean, the way he talked on a platform, the way he talked all the time.
I think we need to understand the slate in the UNC, and even Dr. Mohammed did say they needed to improve the candidates that they had. The slate in the UNC probably wasn't as strong as it is now, but I think also more importantly, when they closed down the refinery, the justification, right, of it was not profitable, it was more believable then, because what did they do? They didn't restructure, they shut it down. So then you're thinking, oh, this old thing, I don't know if it could ever restart again. But I think more and more, as time went on, people started asking more questions.
After 2020.
Right? After 2020. Did it really have to be shut down? Could it not have been just restructured? Or even if it was shut down for a few months, a year, did it need to be shut down for 7 years at this point, right? That's the key difference. So
but that in itself shows that it shouldn't have been shut down in the first place, because now they're going to spend $1 billion to
it might cost more and be more impractical to restart it 7 years later as opposed to restructuring it, right? Because of the extra expense. It being in mothballs for 7 years, it's already an old refinery, and not all old, but look at now the struggle to try to get a private venture to operate it, right? And maybe this is right, it should go back. I don't know if the current administration will relook at Patriotic's bid and assuming it is a reasonable bid, right? Because we never got transparency. So that's part of the problem. A lack of transparency in a lot of these things, you could only kind of fool the people or ask people to give you the benefit of the doubt for so long. But once we hit like 2023, all of a sudden, the amount of times that the government was not giving us transparency and basically just telling us, look, believe what we tell you and don't ask questions. It could only, at some point, people, including us, thought it was ridiculous. There's no more benefit of the doubt because you haven't proven to us that what you're doing is always within the best interest of the country.
I think, though, I will come back to the point, at that point in time, which is the 2020, we are in Gulf,
COVID, yes,
we were in Gulf and COVID, and people felt, people were literally dying. Everybody knew somebody who had died.
The uncertainty of the situation.
And they felt at that point in time, they wanted a person that they perceived to be a strong, no-nonsense leader, and Dr. Rowley presented himself like that, including the international agencies who complimenting him in the way that he closed down the borders very early, like Nigeria did that. And so those things, a moment in time, it was a critical moment in time, and I don't blame the PNM for seizing the moment. And so I don't think the refinery paled in comparison to people losing their lives.
I think also the initial COVID response of the government was probably the high point of that administration.
I agree with that.
And then as we went through COVID, how we spoke on the sheer volume of things we had to criticize of the administration increased significantly in the last 2 years. So, and the refinery is essentially turned into an issue based on how they communicated it. They added that onto the pile of self-inflicted wounds, in my opinion. It's a hindsight thing, but they were the ones responsible for the negative hindsight.
Yeah, I just want to add to, I remembered with the COVID, Terence Yalsing was, we're not used to the government communicating at that level. And he was every day, and I admire that. He would come out and tell you what his state of play was. He would tell you how many people had died, and then he was appeared very upfront with us. So I think that had a lot to do with the outcome of that 2020
Yes,
election.
I have gone on the record already. I know a lot, he's not very popular, but I will always say I appreciated Terence Yalsing during the pandemic.
He did do a good job.
We have Trincity on the line. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Good morning. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can.
Right, okay. Good morning, Sean.
Morning.
Morning to your guests. Mrs. Nunes Teixeira, I listened to your podcast yesterday on the leadership of Stuart Young. Spot on. These things that you brought to the forefront, spot on.
Thank you.
A couple of things I want to discuss. You described the issues in the convention or in the back room with regard to how Mr. Manning was treated. And listening to your tone, it was unacceptable, his treatment. My question is, I'm suggesting, another question, I'm suggesting that that has affected the country negatively over a period of time, right? So I was always wary of the PNM not washing the dirty linen in public. But at the same time, it affects the country. The non-PNM supporters and the non-PNM members, it have implications for the wider community and the wider governance. Just offering that. Another point, when did the PNM and Dr. Rowley realize they were losing? Because I spoke to a PNM colleague yesterday. I am by no means a PNM supporter. I spoke to a colleague yesterday, and they mentioned to me, well, we didn't do too bad. We was expecting anything between 10 to 12 seats. It ain't making sense. I mean, the Matson. Ken Ali, I was listening to him on the live UNC broadcast, and he was saying, I don't want to misquote Mr. Ali. An organization was commissioned to do a poll, and he said he's not calling names of the organization, but it associated with the PNM or a popular media house, and they revealed that Dr. Rowley's, approval ratings was close to rock bottom. So he made a decision to appoint Stuart Young. So my analysis is, you intended to lose. If you wanted to save the PNM and save the election in a particular way, you would have allowed democracy to prevail at the convention. Choose your leader, step aside with dignity, and choose your people. But you went in the convention to boof left, right, and center, appoint Stuart Young that everybody had to be forced to agree with, and you end up losing. Make that make sense. Make it make sense.
We have another caller, but we'll address that after next call. Thank you so much for that. We have Shagonas on the line. Good morning, caller, you on here? Caller, good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, caller. You on here? Go ahead.
I'm a regular viewer and I always enjoy your program. And I must say, Ms. Nunes always brings facts, which I admire.
Thank you.
I want to say thank God we have a change of government. We were real oppressed under that PNM government. And I am very happy that we have a change of government, and I know they will do well. And as for Mr. Rambali, he was a poor representative. He probably is a nice person, well-educated, whatever, but we, the constituents, were not happy with his representation. And we're looking forward to a better representation in this term. And I think the whole, most of the country, we just sighed of relief yesterday. We felt so light and the whole atmosphere was so carefree and peaceful, getting rid of that wicked government. Sorry to say that. The young people were suffering. And it was really, really hard to live in this kind of situation. So thank God for the change of government.
Yeah. I want to say, can I just say quickly to answer?
Thank you, caller. Is that all?
Hello?
Is that all you have to say?
And then somebody else wants to say something. Yeah.
Okay. Hold on.
Hello.
Yes,
Hi.
caller. Go ahead.
Yes, good morning.
Morning.
Well, listening to the conversation, very interesting conversation with respect to the election. I think, Ms. Nunes, you are right on spot in terms of bringing together the facts on the table with respect to the Petrotrin issue.
Yeah.
Should I continue?
Yes, go ahead. Keep going.
Right, with the Petrotrin issue. But you see, Dr. Rowley and Stuart Young and the PNM government, they continue to sell lies to the people as he would have done continuously on platform and all over the place. If you look at that man's face alone, it's only lies and lies and more lies, right? So we don't want to be too critical, but I'm saying that there's a God and He's looking after the nation. And I'll tell you something, really, as the person said earlier, there was a real relief. All the gloom and doom on this nation, all that seems to be gone, and we're very optimistic and hopeful that things are going to, with this new change of government, that everything's going to work smoothly for the time being. And people need to be patient. I mean, lots of expectations from the electorate and the citizens. Promises were made, but we just need to be patient, and everything is going to work out. There are short-term, there are medium-term, and long-term things that we all need to be look into closely, and I'm sure that Mr. Bissessa and her team will really look into that. One more thing I would like to say about closure of state enterprises.
Yes.
Is that they went ahead and they still went ahead and closed Petrotrin. But I think that Carolina Limited, right, was closed in 2003. So much land available. Why should we purchase sugar? So I'm sure they deliberately closed Carolina Limited as well. It could be restructured, similar as the recommendation stated that Petrotrin could have been, it should have been restructured. Okay, so that's my point. Good luck to the nation. Good luck to everybody. God bless our.
Thank you, caller. And we have a comment that is essentially in agreement with what you just said. So we could put the comment up on the screen now. The PNM never understood restructuring, so they shut down Carney and Escort and Petrotrin and many others. These companies provided employment, trading, export potential, and forex. Poor and costly mistakes.
Okay, so you might not like what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
First thing I'm going to say that we have to praise the entire country because, I mean, the PNM did lose, and yet you did not have, and that's what we have to, even the...
there wasn't any sort of...
And the persons that came in from CARICOM observers said that about Trinidad, and we really have to be proud. We have to be proud of ourselves. So we have to congratulate the whole of Trinidad and Tobago for taking the change and taking the change as we have, even if it's not what we wanted. And that I have to say.
On that point, I'll say this. I do like the message of Dr. Brown and Dr. Rowley, at least to some extent. They didn't try to say, you give it to the wicked people. No, he said they are the leaders and some
statesman like
some vision of we have to support them because they succeed, we succeed. They fail, we fail. Not just the UNC fails. That was one of the frustrating things about the previous administration and to some extent how politics was at that point in time.
Okay, two things I do really want to answer that gentleman about. Yes, two things I want to say. One, I did a podcast, which I wish they'd picked up. It's still available on my Facebook. I tried finding it myself, couldn't find it, but somebody sent it to me. I'm really bad on that. But I did something on the energy sector in Trinidad and Tobago, a case of double jeopardy. And it gives you a lot of hope for the energy sector. It's not all doom and gloom at all. They are right to say that. And anybody who wants to look at it, please look at it. It's not about Karen Teixeira. It's about serving the country. And I have a feeling if Kevin Ramnarayan is put back there, he did an excellent job. I suspect he will be the one as Minister of Energy. I have no influence in this. I just say my point. All knowledge. Oh, for sure, I do have knowledge. Yeah. But I'm just saying that he was on the ball, and it's please look at it because I did a lot of research on it.
What's the other thing, quick?
Okay. Oh God, you're.
We have a caller.
Okay, all right. And the other thing with Stuart Young, I think it was the way that he went about it. As the person said, they listened to my podcast on it. The way he went about it, it was not a question that he wanted to get out. He was ready to leave, yes, and play his golf and whatever he had to do.
Oh, you mean Dr. Rowley?
Yes, Dr. Rowley. He was ready to leave, but he wanted Stuart Young because Stuart Young was a mini-me. Stuart Young was going to continue whatever legacy that he had set up. Stuart Young was going to be the person who will continue to be at the beck and call of the 1%. Stuart Young was going to continue the suffering of the poor people, and that is why he did not allow the convention to choose, because if he had done that, they would never have chosen Stuart Young. And he promised, I feel, to those who are on the outside, pulling the strings outside there, that he promised them Stuart Young. And that is why Stuart Young will never be Prime Minister of this country again.
Well, we have San Fernando on the line. Good morning, caller. You on here?
Yes.
Go ahead, caller. You on here? Morning, caller.
Morning. A pleasant good morning.
Morning.
To both of you. And what I'm saying is that the refinery, good morning to you. And, right, and the refinery must be open. And also not only the refinery, we're looking at the biggest gain that the country will gain in the fastest time would be the agricultural industry. The agricultural industry, if we stimulate the growth for the farmers by constructions of road and farming requirements for the farmers, it will tickle and trickle the economy of the country in a manner that no other industry. So within three months, you will see a positive growth in the country. The GDP will increase.
Caller?
In the economy, the GDP will change, and we will have a massive. Now, the food bill is billions of dollars, and we can bring changes immediate. I hope the Prime Minister look at this, and yes, we have to do the refinery, but the immediate employment that this industry can create have a multiplicity effect on the entire economy of the country. And this will give the smaller enterprise, the smaller businessman, an opportunity. Also, Caroni Limited, we have all the land, and we can use the lands in Caroni Limited to have downstream industry together with the sugar, refining of the sugar and manufacturing of the sugar plant. The plant is there. We can use one of those plants. It will create also, because the roads that you have to build and repair will stimulate the economy in a manner in which that the sugar industry and also the citrus industry and the other aspects of the industry in agriculture, the farming aspect, will give a tremendous growth. I would like us to give this an opportunity for the country. This growth is essential because you will be bringing small loans to the farmers. You will be bringing the banking industry, the financial system. You will bring also the marketing issues. You will bring also the whole value chain of the economy of Trinidad and Tobago. Growth will give that value chain a positive impact.
Okay. Thank you, caller. We have a caller on the WhatsApp line.
Thank him. He'll go to the country.
So we'll take, yes. I do have something to say about the sugar, but we'll take the call next. Good morning, caller. You on here?
Good morning. Good morning. I want to congratulate the people of Trinidad and Tobago on voting and everything else, and also Karen Peturio. Also, concerning 2020 elections, right? Remember, when we finally was closed down, a package was paid to the retirees and also to the French workers. So at that time, that money was still functioning. It didn't run out as yet. And then Dr. Rowley had promised that he would sign on the deal for Patriotic. And obviously, Patriotic have to listen to the members of the union. And also they supported that. And then you see the next day, Prime Minister was on TV6 Digital Money Edition, and he was asked the question, what about the refinery? And Dr. Rowley said, don't bother me, don't bully me, don't bully me. I was saying, don't bully me. So all that injustice and all that is what will cause the effect now that they have in terms of the elections today, going to the other side, but the UNC was showing more commitment in terms of the refinery, and she was given motherly love, saying that we will work with you, support our ideas, we will work with you. So she played, she honestly not played, but we see the need for the people, and we believe. And I also want to congratulate the people of Trinidad and Tobago for making a great decision and to support the initiative. Remember, things won't happen right away. It will take some time, and be confident and have the faith. And I want to thank Karen Teixeira and also John and for giving us all this wisdom in voting and everything else. Thank you and blessings. Success for Trinidad and Tobago.
Thank you, caller.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say, the thing with the sugar production, we do need to not necessarily look at it so clear-cut. What happened was when Carney sugar production, one could argue maybe Carney didn't need to be shut down. But we were competing against larger producers who had greater economies of scale. Now, years ago, I remember seeing an article, Indonesia as a sugar producer, hopefully I'm not mixing up with Thailand.
Brazil.
But no, with Indonesia, what happened was they were starting to be able to export less and less because of self-consumption of their own product, right? Now, Brazil is still the biggest producer. What happened is a window opened up not too long ago where we may have had space in the market if we went back to sugar. The problem is climate change. Now, Brazil, I think we're close to the equator too, so I don't know if we have the same issues with heat stress and lack of rain with regards to sugar crop and how that affects the growth of the crop, as well as the fact that you also have situations with the American tariffs and global trade being upset over the last 5 years for different reasons, some of which are still ongoing. So I don't know if the opportunity with sugar is still there. We kind of lost it in the past. A window opened up. It might be maybe too volatile to go with sugar, but to say that Carney itself should have been shut down and the agricultural industry that it represented shut down, I'll say I will agree with the fact that potentially we should have looked to some other crop to replace sugar, depending on circumstances, and we don't have time to get into it. So I'm going to just say potentially. And potentially we could still, if not sugar, go to something else now, if that's what we decide to do. Because I guess food security is that big of a deal, so maybe not sugar, maybe something a bit more with regards to our staple products to some extent for our own consumption. Karen, I don't know if you want to...
Yeah, I just want to say that I was a minister at the time when the preferential treatment for sugar was removed. The British had come to an end.
Right, yes.
And so too for Mauritius. So the reality was that I think Dr. Rowley was the Minister of Agriculture during that period, and Carney Limited was losing by over 5 billion TT dollars a year. So it was not contributing to the GDP, it was actually doing the opposite.
Yeah.
And that was because of the fact that, well, mainly, one, the economies of scale, we simply did not have it, and we could not compete with Brazil, Indonesia, and so on. And you look, when at that time we did this study, and our sugar was far more expensive. And part of that is because it was so labor intensive, and part of that reason was to keep people in employment, which I'm not giving an opinion on that one way or the other. But what I will say is, with regard to sugar, my view is that, that what they've done in Barbados, we grow sugar. There's a gentleman in Trinidad growing organic sugar, and then we grow the sugar for the persons who want to go into the rum-based industries, the rum, the sweets, the confectionery, using our Tintaro chocolate, which we lost by 90% in 2023. Most of the crop had been destroyed. So there's avenue for creating a specialized niche in the sugar industry, but then we need the agriculture for food security in other areas, the tomatoes, bygone, you know, all the other things that we eat in this country. You know, we need to go down that route and look for agri-industry, which I have seen. I go to a particular kind of boutique type of place, and they have a lot of locally produced stuff and beautifully packaged. So somebody needs to teach people how to package, how to market, because we have absolutely fantastic products. We need to have jobs, food security in this country, which all the big countries do have, and we do need to have an export thing with the agri-industry. The last thing I want to say with the oil is on record is two things. At wesn school, about a few weeks before election, Dr. Rowley, as Prime Minister, said, "What is wrong with the union? What's wrong with the union? I'm sorry to sign on the dotted line." That's what he said. Secondly, the former Minister of 2020, so when they closed it down.
Yes.
Right?
So
and
he's
the
ready
reason,
to sign the refinery. Yeah.
Yes, and the reason they closed it down because of this bullet payment that was due probably in 2 years in US billions of dollars. It was not one you could stagger it. It was a payment that was due on that date. So he used that as the reason to close it down. But the Minister of Finance has gone on record that he could have restructured the loan. So it was not necessary to close it down. So I don't know what was the reason that he felt that he had to close it down, but all the advice was to the contrary, as I understand it, and we're paying the price now. Because for the last 7 years, my understanding is a company, I don't know who it is, but I could take a good guess, $500,000 TT dollars they are being paid to take care of what the Prime Minister said was scrap metal. Yes, that's what he said, 101 years old, doing as though they didn't do. I mean, you know, you're talking through two sides of your mouth. That's what you're doing. They're talking through two sides of your mouth, right? And they said they could have restructured it. That's what the Minister of Finance was on record as saying. And then they came at the last minute to say that they couldn't go ahead with the refinery because TTPH, Trinidad and Tobago Petroleum Holding Limited, was going to be liable for any debts that the refinery would have incurred. So they did not want to, so it wasn't going to be Heritage would have been responsible as well as Paria Trading would have been responsible. And that's when they decided to pull out on the last minute. But, you know, the fact that you're going back at it and paying $500,000 a month to keep that refinery supposedly protecting the scrap metal that they have there is only testimony to the fact that you should never have closed it down in the first place.
And we've said this before, even if
there's so many things you have said before.
Even if it was maybe not making money, maybe it was losing money, depending, there's a cost-benefit analysis of, well, but if it's getting us more, not just that, more foreign exchange, maybe we kind of bite out some of that bullet, depending on how much it's costing us. Right? How much it's actually costing us, not what the account says when you account for all of the loans and so forth. That still need to be paid off anyway. We're not talking about variable costs. We're talking about fixed costs that still existed after the closure. There's a comment. We have to wrap up the show, but we have to acknowledge this comment. The UNC has, Ms. Kamala, made some mighty promises. The UNC will have to go for some quick wins to keep political capital. I somewhat agree with that. That is just the nature of the beast. That's not anything inherent to us. That's just the nature of human nature and public perception. Clean up and refresh TT. It is dingy, dirty, and in bad shape environmentally. People thrive and feel better about themselves. There's some truth to that. Also focus on infrastructure and roads. I will agree with that, but I will just say this. I think a better mass transit system would be something that we need to look at. Do a cost-benefit analysis, something quick, not a 10-year study, right? Because if we just add more roads, if we want to improve the road network to get more remote places better connected to the country, I'll agree with that. If you want to add another lane to each highway, I wouldn't necessarily agree with that because they'll just invite more cars to on the rush hour traffic every morning and every afternoon to come and go to work and go home. So there is that. But yes, she does need some quick wins, but she can't sacrifice the future for the present. That's essentially what the PNM did. One could argue that's what the People's Partnership Administration, when she was there, did, right? The last government, I think, that really was looking to the future was Mr. Manning's government. Unfortunately, that snap election really just undermined everything that could have been done in that period. So on that respect, I have to agree with everybody that tried to tell him don't do it, because here's the thing, I have a lot of regret with a lot of what the current previous administration did. That's where I'm bitter. Not who they were or whatever. I'm bitter with all of the decisions that I vehemently disagree with, but I also really, you know, there's a part of me, and I think I'm speaking to you here, to go back in time and to say what could have been. Ever since you informed me of what the agenda was, I always think about what could have been between 2007 to 2012. True. Right? Thanks for the comment. We try our best. We try not to necessarily make things personal or have bias, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. It is what it is. I just want to, if anything, my last statement on the matter would just be that I very much got afraid of the fact that after about 2022 going into 2023, it seemed as though there was very little positive things we could say about the then current administration, and it worried me. The implications, not just for our network, our show, and how we're perceived, because it's very easy to say we're very biased against government. But if we had very little positive to say, well then what could we do? And of course the greater implication, why then? If there's not much positive to say, that means that there's not much positive going on for the country. And what does that mean? Thanks to all of the messages and to all of the callers. Karen?
No, I just want to say that next week we probably can look more at what are the things that I would think that she should give priority to. And, you know, I mean, it's true. I think people will be more patient because we know we are where we are because the economy is in a mess. So, you know, and they had 10 years to get it right. So I think people will understand that they're going to have to hold strain in a way that they probably weren't so forgiving with this government because to a large extent they got us where we are. She didn't put us where we are, especially in the energy sector. So we wait and see. Next week we can continue the conversation.
I mean, part of it is, I have always said the circumstances for the PNM was hard, but still, we could criticize how they managed it, and now we get to see how the other side will manage it. Two quick things we should acknowledge. One, of course, the victory of the TPP on the two Tobago seats changes the political landscape in a way that we haven't seen, I don't know how long, if ever, and it does potentially give, you know, maybe there's an opportunity to bring Tobagonians into cabinet depending on if they are part of the majority, if they're invited to be part of the government or not. And then the last thing, I don't know if you want to say it, but the opposition leader is expected to be chosen today in that general council meeting.
As I say, it's going to be hot.
Do you want to say who?
I would say Marvin Gonzalez would be my choice.
Mine too.
Yeah.
Mine too. And I think those who have offered opinions on PNM MPs and ministers and parliamentarians, most will probably agree with me.
And it's not because I taught him. He came on the show.
But you taught everybody.
Yeah, but he came on the show when they have been in office and many of them would not come on.
Yes.
He's very respectful.
Yes.
A really good statesman, and I think he has in circumstances, I know he hasn't been there for a very long time, but so was a lot of them. And we have to put what is in the interest of the country. And I think given the choice that we have, he is the best choice for the opposition and for Trinidad and Tobago.
And when he was not communicating on behalf of cabinet, but he was communicating in his role as Minister of Public Utilities for WASA, one big thing that I made note of, he would always praise the people of WASA and never say, look at what I did. It was, look at what they did. A sign of a leader is to give praise to others and potentially take blame on yourself. And to some extent, he did more on that count than a lot of politicians in TNT, a lot of his ministerial, his cabinet peers. So if those leadership traits hold true and he could stay in that form, that would be someone...
Don't get corrupted.
And listen, it's not about the UNC doing well or the PNM doing well. No. If they both do well, the country does well. With that said,
you ready going now?
Yes, we're going now. Have a good day. Remember your allegiance to the Republic and to each other. Let's not make things personal. We all have to pull together now, hopefully give this government a chance. If they fail of their own accord, then that's a whole different story. But right now, let's be optimistic. Stay safe out there, and it's nice to be nice. Let's keep up what we saw on election day, that result that the international community is praising us for. Let's keep that going throughout our daily lives. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
WESN.
My name is Dr. Stephen Carroll, the CEO at Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist, and we are committed to making good private health care affordable.
For all your medical needs, including dental, radiology, laparoscopy, behavioral and mental health, along with many other services, contact us for more information at 235-5479.
Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.